Hello and happy Wednesday. Today on the Busy Bride podcast, I am chatting with Sheila from Beyond Blissful Events, a wedding coordination business located in Chester County. We talk about all the little nitty gritty details she helps her couples with so that they can remain as blissful as possible throughout their wedding day. And she even shares a horror story about a classic car situation gone wrong that she was able to turn around and rescue for the couple. I cannot wait for you to hear all the goodness Sheila has to offer. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Busy Bride podcast. I'm your host, Gabriella Marie, and I created this podcast to help you research vendors and learn valuable advice as you plan the most special and true to you wedding day of your dreams. Let's get started. Hello, Sheila. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I worked with you for the first time at a wedding this fall in November, and it was a fantastic wedding, and I'm sure we're going to rehash it further on in the episode. But just to start, why don't you tell all the listeners your name, your business, your location, and then maybe a fun fact about you or your business.
Okay, sure. So my business is named Beyond Blissful Events. I'm based in Parksburg, but nobody knows where Parksburg is. So for reference, I will say I'm about 20 minutes from downtown. I'm smack dab in the middle of Lancaster and Philadelphia. So that is basically where I serve, is in between the two big cities. I'm trying to localize a little bit more in the upcoming years, more Chester County based, so I'm not driving an hour and a half, but sometimes I love the venue so much I'll do it anyways. And then what else did you ask me? A fun fact. I think my fun fact is that I was a high school math teacher before I started this. I went to college for it. I had my bachelor's. I did my master's degree. I taught for 8 years. And I just didn't love it. I mean, we can get into it more later, but that's my fun fact is somehow along the way I was led into wedding planning, very opposite of teaching math.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's like a 180 in career pivots. I love that.
It is, and it isn't. It's definitely a 180, but then someone was like, talking about the skills that transfer from one to the other, the organizational skills, the nonstop moving, making agendas, getting everybody to where they need to be. And I was like, okay, I can see those pieces.
Oh my gosh, now that you say that too, I'm thinking of a bunch of guests at cocktail hour and making sure they get into reception at the right time. And I'm like, that's kind of like getting kids in from recess.
Yeah. Or the high schoolers back to class after lunch,
Oh yeah.
Say it in the right way that you're encouraging, but also like,
but let's actually move.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, why don't you tell me more about that? Give me a little bit backstory about your business. When did you start Beyond Blissful Wedding Planning, and is there any event that kind of like set that into motion?
Yeah. So my very first wedding that I only charged $500 for was back in September of 2022. It was 1 month after my own wedding. So I was a little nervous to take it on, but I was like, let's do this kind of thing. And then I jumped into actual business February 2023 is when everything became official. So next month is my 2-year anniversary of being official in business. So what had happened is kind of a series of events, right? So I was teaching, as mentioned, didn't love it every year. I thought maybe next year I'll love it. And then I had my daughter she was born at the end of 2020. And I kept thinking to myself, if I'm going to leave her for something, I want it to be something that I love. I want to come home a happy person, share good stories with my family, and teaching just wasn't it. I didn't love leaving her for that. So I needed to figure something else out, and we were getting married and we were planning away, and unpopular opinion, I loved planning. I I loved making all the spreadsheets. I was the bride that was making timelines for her own family members, and they thought I was nuts, but I was like, no, this is great. What do you mean? So I loved all of it. And I actually have two friends who are also photographers in the business. And they were like, why don't you become a coordinator? And I was like, I never thought of it. So they linked me with some wonderful coordinators based in the Lancaster area, and I started shadowing with them and assisting. And every time I came home, I was telling my husband, I was like, I love this. So we decided I wanted to take that leap of faith, and he supported me in doing it. He was like, I want you to come home happy, so let's do it, kind of thing. And so I dove in. I got some weddings booked. My last year of teaching, I think I had 4 weddings, and I was like, that's good. So I left, and then my first year I ended up with 18 weddings, and then last year was 28 weddings. So it took off. Thank goodness. It was it's been a really cool journey. Really.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. That's really cool that you jumped. I mean, 18 your first year is insane. And then to jump to 28, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And also to start so soon after your own wedding. You said your first wedding was a month after your own.
Yeah. I joined all the, Philly Facebook groups for people getting married, and there was a couple, they're like, we're doing a backyard wedding. We wanted a coordinator. We have a tight budget. And I was like, I can work with that if you'll give me a chance. So I just sent him a message, and I was like, think about it. I don't want to be, a pest or anything. Let me know how you feel. And he's like, yes, our family, we come from, small businesses. We've created a lot. So we love giving that chance to other people. So it just fell in line, and I did their day. And then I used that wedding for all of my marketing.
That's amazing. I feel like a lot of wedding vendors have similar stories where it's like they start out super small and then they market that one wedding for everything, but then it takes off. My first wedding, I think I charged $500 as well.
Really?
So yes, it was a small day, intimate day. It was COVID time, so lots of backyard weddings happening then. But it's so cool that you were starting like, okay, you can take a chance on me, and then booked 18 weddings.
Well, I truly have like Philly brides and all those Facebook groups to thank for it. I don't advertise. My clients, my couples have been amazing, and they just share my name in those groups. Everything pops up in there, and that's how I started. So I'm very grateful.
That's amazing that you do such great work that people are just like talking about you and sharing your business. That is amazing. So as a wedding planner coordinator, what exactly do you do? Like, what would you say is in your job description? Your front facing job description, maybe not as much of like the, back end self-employed stuff.
Yeah. So I tend to ramble. You can slow me down here or tell me that like we get it kind of thing. But our passions, we tend to talk a lot about them. So
1000%.
So I'll try to go through like a basic package. What we do, I'll try not to go into too much depth. So we have our consultation as mentioned, and then after that, we start working closely together. So I will say coordination is my main package. I also offer partial planning, but I'll go through coordination. So we'll start working close together at 8 to 12 weeks out. We will do a site visit where we go through all the logistics. Even if I've seen the venue, we'll still visit together because I want to know their vision. And if I haven't seen it prior, then I want to know everything that makes the day run behind the scenes. So the big ones were ceremony, cocktail, and reception suites, but also like, where's the suites? I need to know where to hide you. Where are we lining you up for introductions? Where can we go if you guys need a moment alone? Where are we gonna hide everyone prior to ceremony to get them down the aisle? So all of those little pieces, where the decor goes, where we pick it up at the end of the night. So site visit is logistics.
And it's huge too, I bet, to do that, because asking little questions like that day of, like, oh wait, where are we hiding you again? Or where did you say you wanted this to be put? Feeling the need to ask that day of, it may seem like little questions, but as somebody getting married, those little questions, like, each one takes a little bit away from your experience and then a little bit away from where you were in the moment. Like, it just kind of takes away. So having that site visit ahead of time, I'm sure, is like huge for your couple's experience day of, because then you get there day of and you know what you're doing. You know where to go, you know where people need to be, you know where the decor goes, and you're set.
Yeah, you don't have to follow people around. So that's really helpful, and it helps them to usually the questions. So I have like a 2-page document I'll bring with me, and usually within those questions kind of turns their gears, and they're like, oh, following up on that, here's all the things we missed throughout this time so far. So site visit is great. We'll do that together. The other one I say is always optional is leading rehearsal. So I say it's optional because some venues, some churches prefer to lead it on their own. So my couples can keep it in their package or take it out. And I also say, even if the venue wants to lead, that's okay. I can just be there to support whatever they want. So rehearsal, we figure out where everyone's going to line up at the arch and how we're going to process in and recess out. Of course, we talk about it beforehand, but rehearsal live lets us make any necessary edits before the day of. And then our third big meeting is our details meeting. And that one tends to take the longest. Sometimes we even split it into 2 because it can get pretty long. So this is where I talk a lot. So you tell me to cut it.
Go for it.
So we will talk about all of the big things, right? So if I'm leading their ceremony and rehearsal, we're going to talk through that. We're going to talk through decor. So I have a big spreadsheet so that they can fill everything in there. What is the item? Where do you want it? How do you want it set up? Do you trust my judgment? If someone set something up wrong, can I fix it? Where are we packing it at the end of the night? So ceremony, decor. We'll talk about vendors. So we talk about the basics, right? Arrival and departure time. Not that I want to be anyone's timekeeper, but that is a big part of the job. I hate to say it. There's been vendors that either didn't show up at all or were just running a little bit behind and we had to track them down. I know. Can't control it all. It happens. So we talk about those basic things, but then I also dive into their other needs, right? So if there's a photo booth, how much space do they need on the floor? Have we accounted for that in the floor plan? Your photographer, sometimes you often make timelines, right? You're great with that. Sometimes I dive in before the photographer's gotten there and I can help them brainstorm. Like if they've gotten an 8-hour package, do you want to start early enough that they get some hair and makeup, or do you want them to start later so that they can still get that time on the dance floor? And then we'll talk through like announcements that the DJ needs to make. Are they also playing for ceremony or is it musicians? So all the ins and outs of vendors. And then our big ticket item is the timeline, my favorite. So often couples get so many timelines even before they get to me. I know that everyone's just trying to help and people love making timelines, but I feel bad. So I had a couple in October come to me and they were like, they booked me, I want to say maybe 5 weeks before their wedding. And yeah, that was a while.
Wow, that's pretty soon.
Yeah, they were so overwhelmed. They said, we have 5 timelines from all their vendors. So my big thing is to jump in before those timelines happen. But if I come late in the process, I'm going to overlap, inspect, cross-reference all of those timelines and make sure that they work. So I always use the venue timeline and the photographer timeline as the main ones, right? Because reception, we need to know timing of food. I can't mess with what they're doing at the venue. And then photographers, you're all different. You have, some people like 30 minutes on detailed shots, some like 15, it depends. So I work with all of those, I overlap them, and I make one big master timeline, and then we create a big action list. Here's all the things that you're not doing, haven't figured out yet. Here's what we need to figure out. Here's our reminders. So that's where it might get split into 2 meetings if they didn't have all of the answers, we can regroup in another meeting so that it's a little less overwhelming. Um, after that, after that big meeting is a lot of cleanup in that timeline, share it with all of the vendors, make sure that everyone has all the information that they need. I have announcements highlighted. Everyone kind of gets their own color code so there's nothing missed. We make edits if anyone really needs it. And then that's all the things leading up to the wedding. Day of, there's up to 12 hours. We'll set up all the decor. We'll break it all down at the end of the night. There's no limits. You saw how much I did at our November wedding.
Yes, and there were so many cute details. So many cute details. But then at the end of the night, you're like, who takes these? Where do they go? Who, like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a lot. So we're there to take care of that. And then outside of decor, we run the timeline. So if I have a great photographer like you, I can, relax a little bit more leading up through things and focus more on the decor. Sometimes there's photographers that are wonderful, but they, get excited about that creativity. So I have to
get lost in it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But I always have an assistant with me. So we kind of conquer, divide, and do our thing that way. So we'll run the timeline and we'll problem solve if needed, which 9 times out of 10, something happens, right? So we problem solve quickly. We get the team on board. So I wouldn't just say, so I had a wedding where the speech went 12-minute speech from Dad.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And they had given him, they said 2 to 3 minutes, Dad, but he did 12 minutes. So that pushed things back a little bit. We couldn't squeeze in the parent dances before the second course or whatever it had been. So we problem solved. Where are we going to fit it in instead that it flows well? And I'm not just going to make that decision and call it a day. I go around and I tell the team, make sure photographer's ready, videographer's ready. So we problem solve as needed. We make sure everybody's on board when we do have those parent dances. If they're coming up on time, we schedule them for 7:10 and we're good. I'm still not going to start them right yet. At 7:05, we're going to make sure, are those parents in the room? Is the photographer ready with light stands, videographer around, all those little pieces that you might not think of until you're in the swing of things. What else?
I mean, that was I want to touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you're giving so many great details, and I'm sure lots of little things that you don't even think about possibly needing to think about until you're in the moment and it's happening. Something small like that. Like, I know venues are pretty strict with their meal times because they're cooking for a lot of people. They want to give you hot food. And so if they're ready to put food out, they're going to put food out.
Yeah.
And so if you need to adjust things, like if a speech goes long, like you said, like there's so many little things you need to think about with reordering your reception timeline. And for the couple, for the guests, they don't really care because it's still happening. They still get to do your parent dances. It doesn't matter to you, but for all of the vendors behind the scenes, it does matter. And making sure there's, knowledge, like, okay, this is happening at this time instead. Where are my light stands? Are we going to get our food at a certain time? Do I need to eat real quick? We're going to be eating later. Like, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So having someone like you, a coordinator who knows everything that needs to be said, everybody that needs to be talked to, when there's a change of plans like that last minute is huge. Because, again, if it was just up to the couple, they might not know what to do. Right. And then they're thinking about what to do instead of enjoying their wedding day.
Yeah. And I see a lot of, posts where people are like, what if we save, money and just have our aunt do it, or, our friend or whatever. And I think, like, it's such a lovely idea, but like I said, you don't know what you don't know until you're doing it, kind of thing. So you don't want to pull them away, but also there's so many things that can come up. Even if you have the best planned wedding ever, something can always happen.
Yeah, like Dad having a 12-hour toast because it's, it's his daughter's son's wedding day, and that's a huge deal for him, and he gets caught up in the moment. That's a beautiful thing. but then that has repercussions that need to be taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then I think the decor thing is something that doesn't really get talked about much either. Like having somebody to carry it in, set it up, and then break it down and carry it out and put it somewhere. That
Yeah.
is huge
Yeah.
because if you don't do it, who's going to?
Yeah. That's actually why I had a coordinator for my own wedding. I'm very type A, obviously, and wanted to do everything on my own, but I wanted to hang out. So one of my favorite memories from my own wedding day was sitting in the bridal suite with the girls and just, having mimosas, singing songs, getting our hair and makeup done. It was such a good, relaxing time with my favorite people. And if you don't have a coordinator, you don't really get to do that. Someone's gotta, even if you had your mom or your aunt or your friend doing it, they'd be coming in, is this how you want it? What do I do with this kind of thing? So um having me do it kind of takes away from all that back and forth. It allows you to sit and hang out. There are some venues that do it, but you have to make sure, like get it in writing kind of thing, make sure it's not wishy-washy. Some venues are lovely, right? The venue that am I allowed to speak on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So at Stony Brook, Leanne, she does everything. She is phenomenal. She stayed with me to the end of the night. She packed everything up with me. She's great. You don't always find that, so you just have to be careful.
Yes. No two venues are alike for sure.
Yeah.
But the venue we worked at together, the barn at Stony Brook, was beautiful, fantastic staff. Everybody cared so much and was really integral to it being such a great day.
Yeah, big fan.
big fan of the barn at Stony Brook. Shout out. I love that. Okay. Another question I wanted to ask, because you said you started right after your wedding and you loved getting ready with your girls. Was there anything else at your own wedding that kind of shapes how you view weddings now as a coordinator? So you were a bride, you had the whole experience, you had somebody coordinate for you. What do you kind of bring into wedding days now with that experience of being a bride?
I think that's kind of how I named Beyond Blissful. So I love how blissful my day felt, even though I am type A. And there were some moments where I was like, is the DJ gonna get this song started? I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
But because I trusted my coordinator and everyone else, I wanted to bring that into what I do now. So sometimes there's things that people will say, right, that's not in my job scope, but typically I would do it anyways,
Yep.
I want them to feel that, it's the one day where majority of the people that you love is in the room. You put so much time into planning, lots of money, all of those things. And I want them to feel like they got to enjoy it and remember it and have all the special moments that I had.
I love that so much. And I was going to ask about Beyond Blissful. So it's a beautiful reason for the name because you should feel blissful on your wedding day, just floating through the day, enjoying every single moment.
Yeah.
I love that. So I guess compounding on that, what's one of your favorite parts about being a coordinator? What makes you come home from a wedding day that you coordinated and you're like, dang, that was such a great day?
Oh, so many things. So I am a servant by heart. I always have been. I used to joke. So I actually was a server for 12 years. And to this day, my boss is still my best friend. And I always used to say to him, you give me benefits and I will work for you forever. Because I love that job. I love the fast pace. I love connecting with people, even though it's not forever. But I love, making them feel important, making them feel like they have been served, they're happy, giving them that good time. So there's that piece of it. One of my favorite moments at weddings is sometimes the last song of the night. because everyone gets on the dance floor and it gives me chills. They're all just so excited. They're surrounding the couple. I'm getting chills talking about it because I'm thinking of a couple in particular where that happened, right? Everyone's just like loose. All the formalities are over and it's just this beautiful time. So much love in the room and a good time. So I do love that. I love the fast pace of the whole day. I've never been one to sit. I don't think I could do an office job. I have to be on the go. So even teaching, that was a little hard sometimes, right? Because I have to stay in the classroom and work with students instead of getting my to-do list done, which sounds terrible. I did love my students.
Yes, I totally get what you mean. Yes.
But I'm always a busybody. So I love that piece of it. And then I also love meeting so many different people. I always want my couples to be my BFFs after. I am so grateful for social media because, we keep in touch that way. I get to see their lives afterwards. I'm a little sad when the families don't adopt me at the end of the night kind of thing. So
yep.
What else? So many things. I love being able to go somewhere new all the time. I'm a sucker for seeing all the venues, right? Beautiful, lush gardens, all the architecture, being in different cities. I love that piece of it. So, all my favorite things, all in one.
Yes, I love all of those things as well. I think too, with the different venues, it is so cool as a vendor to be able to see all these new venues. And I'm sure, I know it's the same for me and for a lot of photographers I know, I'm sure it's the same for you. Getting to go to a new venue for a wedding day, you're just like filled with energy and creativity, and the ideas just start flowing and coming out of here because you're seeing everything with a new pair of eyes. And I know sometimes, I don't know if you get this question a lot, but as a photographer, some couples will ask me if I've been to a venue before or if I've photographed a wedding there before. And when I say no, I'm like, no, but let me tell you what, that's a great thing. I'm going to be so like bouncing off the walls, full of energy and like seeing everything in new ways. Is it kind of the same way for you as a planner or coordinator when you go to a new venue and you're like, oh, well, we could put this way, or like, this is how we could set this up in this area where the bride really wanted it?
Yes and no. So I do love the creativity piece of it. Right? Because like you said, it's just like, oh, look at this, right? There's so many things we get excited for. So I do love that piece of it. But sometimes I do love going back to a venue that I've already been at least once, just for the familiarity of it. Like if something arises and I need to know where it is, right? So there's one of my other favorite venues is the Washington in Phoenixville. Gorgeous. They Their coordinator leaves a little bit after cocktail hour. She is so lovely. She heads home and she lets me run things. And I've done a couple weddings there now. And there's times when people are like, hey, it's hot in here. And I'll just go grab the key from the closet, open the air conditioner, and turn it up, So there's like, whereas before, if I wasn't at that venue, I don't know if I can touch it. I'm going to need to make a phone call, and it turns into a little more of a process. So there's like pros and cons, I guess, in the creativity world. Love it. Logistically, it's easier to be at one that you're familiar with.
That makes a lot of sense because, again, in my field, like I'm not touching thermostats regardless. That's not a question that usually gets asked for me. So it totally makes sense where, like, yes, the creativity aspect is cool, but being able to have the experience to know, like, I know what to do here. I can take care of you. No worries. That's also priceless to have on a wedding day, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Is there a question that you get often from couples that is either something maybe they didn't know before hiring a coordinator that they needed to know, or just a question you get asked a lot in your consult calls that you can share the answer to?
Yeah. So this one is so random and it's not a big question, but I will say the one question that gets asked in nearly every call is, will you pass out vendor tips at the end of the night?
Interesting.
Yeah. I guess maybe because I speak so much when I explain the package that I kind of hit all the points and that's the one that's left kind of thing. But that one is a big ticket item. I don't know, maybe it's they don't want to feel the pressure of having to do it kind of thing, and they want to make sure that they've given that task off to someone. So that is a big one, surprisingly.
Yeah. And the answer, I'm assuming, is yes.
I do, yes. I've come across people that won't, coordinators or venues that won't, just because there's been times, there's always a horror story, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I haven't had a horror story. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
It's always been very lovely with my couples. So I don't mind doing it. And I enjoy doing it because the vendors get so excited, right?
It's so much. Yes, it's so sweet whenever that happens.
Yeah.
It's never like expected either. It's always like, oh, wow, this is so nice. Nice surprise.
Expected. It's just like a little treat at the end of the night. And then the only other one that I can think of is when another big question is, will you be around for hair and makeup? So I offer 12 hours, which is long, but if the wedding's going until 11, we're cleaning up till midnight, I wouldn't start until noon, and hair and makeup might start at 6 or 7. So I tell them that they can use those hours how they would like those hours, but if it's not enough, we can add on. So sometimes I've had a couple brides where it makes them just feel more reassured if someone's around for hair and makeup, right? There's not a ton of things we can do. We can make sure that everyone's had their coffee and food is arriving on time for breakfast. We can get those details ready for when the photographer comes, make sure no one touches their bouquets once they get their dresses on to get them wet. We can kind of just, I don't want to say be a gopher, but in the morning, that's kind of what you're doing, is making sure everybody has everything. So we can do that. So I always say, we can add it on. Either my assistant or myself will come for those extra couple hours.
I do see how that's a question as well. And I also see how there's not much for you to do at that time. I feel like the morning is oftentimes just left for like, you just chill out, you have fun, you relax, you let other people do your hair and makeup while you sit and chill.
Yeah.
But if you
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, maybe if you have like last minute details that need to happen, or if there's certain logistics for your day where you need this person to have this thing, but they're not at the same location as you, and you don't want to send one of your bridesmaids, like, totally get that.
Yeah. There's, I think all of the hair and makeup teams I work with have been on time. They are rock stars. They know, like, this is how much time it takes, and typically they're always running on time. But like you said, there's those little things, like I've had to run cufflinks up to a dad because they were his gift, but he needed them for the photos. So I went between floors in the hotel so that no one else had to do it. So there's always those little things.
Yes, it's always little details where, like, it's not a huge deal, but if you don't have to worry about it, if you don't have to send somebody to do that, then that's just all the more bliss that you get to experience. Yes, and if there's a day in your life to have everything taken off your shoulders, it's your wedding day.
Yes, exactly.
1000%. Okay. Couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
I think we hit a lot of this, but I wanted to see if there's anything else, like anything that really stands out to you, like why, if nothing else, why should somebody hire a professional like you to coordinate their day instead of having their aunt or their mom or a friend do it? Or somebody who is like a friend who wouldn't have been invited to the wedding, but they said they get to be at the wedding, but they've never coordinated a wedding before.
Yeah, so the big one is that blissful feeling, which we've touched on. But also, I think it comes down to that person loves you. They will do what they can for you, but they haven't seen all of the things that could go wrong and might not have the problem solving skills, to figure it out. They might not be able to command authority, right? or command attention, like be authoritative in that moment when you need to get everyone from one place to another. There's a lot of characteristics that go into it. And if it's someone that, that you love and is there to support you, they might not want to be like, like
time to go.
Yes. Whereas I know the moments where I have to switch into that mode. Of course, I'm always still friendly, positive face. I can't even yell. So it's not like
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've never seen you not smiling.
Well, that's good. I always try to keep on that positive face, right?
Absolutely.
So there's times where I'll have to use my teacher voice to kind of get people moving. So I think it just helps. And then someone showing up, like that family or friend coming in the day of, it's lovely and it's helpful, but I would never show up to a wedding. So I never call it day of coordination, which is a popular term. I think it's coined by one of those big wedding websites. But I would never call myself a day of coordinator. My favorite thing is wedding logistics management, or I just say coordinator. I wouldn't even say month of, because I can do it in a month, but it takes so much to go through all those little details behind the scene, get everybody on the same page. I had a videographer that didn't answer for weeks, and he did come on the day of, and he was lovely, but I ended up calling him a week prior, and I was like, hey, you coming? And he was like, yeah, the photographer was answering, so I just let her do her thing. And I was like, okay, that's great. But, in my worrisome self, I was like, I needed to make sure that you were a real person that was going to come, because unfortunately things like that happen. There was a time when the vintage car that my couple was getting photos with had gotten into an accident, and they, not with them, just on the way.
Right. Okay.
Everyone was okay. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
But still, that's a moment you're like, oh no.
Yeah, and they had called and said, sorry, this happened. We won't be able to be there. I was working on at the church that day, and my assistants were with the couple. And they were like, that's not good enough. So they tag teamed on the phone, calling different companies. They called that company. We've worked with so many vendors that we have a list of trusted people we can call if we need a backup. So they figured it out. They got another car to come later in the day. It was like such a big save. But I feel like, as much as someone would want to save the day for you that you've had come from, your friends or family, it might not always be in their wheelhouse. They might not have all those tools to do it.
Absolutely. Agree with everything there. Like there is so much that goes into it, not just the day of. It's like what, 6 to 12 weeks beforehand that you're working with the couple. So having all of that in mind makes the biggest difference in the world.
It does.
Yes, and so happy you're able to save that car story.
It was a good one. It was a good day. I'm always applauding them on that day. They did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, wrapping up, a two-part question for you. I always ask anybody on the show, what is your biggest tip for couples getting married? Okay. Both professionally, so as a coordinator, and then personally as somebody who is married.
Okay, so my first tip can be a little bit of a sticky topic. So it involves budget. So we're talking money. But my big first tip is, early on in the process, before you dive in, sit down with your partner and have a big open conversation where we're not going to judge each other. We're going to speak freely about what we truly want, what we truly value, before you start any of the planning, and then have that talk about budget, of course. But why I say it's sticky is because my big thing is that it's yours and your partner's day alone It's no one else's. They are there to celebrate you. And they are part of things, but every choice that should be made should be what you and your partner value as like a true expression of your love, that you're celebrating. So I say that's sticky because sometimes you're not paying for all of your wedding or part of your wedding. So I feel like that's another tip there, is to figure out, do you really want to accept that money? And before you say yes to accepting the money, is decide, or speak with that person, whether it's your parents or whoever it may be. Speak with them and say, does this money come with strings, or do we have free reign? My parents helped and we had free reign. My dad just always wanted his little girl to get married. But if I said like, what kind of food should I have? He'd be like, I don't know. Like he had nothing. Right.
Yes.
But I've met with couples who are very stressed because mom wants this or dad wants this, and it doesn't make them feel good about the process. And then I'm like, that's a bummer. This should be so exciting for you. I mean, there's going to be stress, right? There's so much to figure out, but I just wish I could take that added stress away. So that's a big sticky topic. I know that sometimes we need the help financially. Weddings can be so expensive, but they also don't have to be. If you can work around things, if you're willing to, let go of certain standards. Like, I had a buffet at my wedding and I don't regret it, but some people never. But we saved huge in that. So you find the pieces that you can cut back on that don't mean as much, and then locate the money to the things that you really care about, your photographer or your band or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
So, sticky topic.
But huge. Just to like figure out your values and then put the money to where the values are.
Yes.
And then that's like, as long as those boxes are checked, then I think the rest can just be figured out, know?
Yeah. So that's a big one. And then as a former bride, I would say, I guess photographer was most important for me. And while I did love my photographer, her work is beautiful, it wasn't enough. Like, I think my album was 500 pictures or something total. And now as a coordinator, I get all of my couples' albums and they're thousands. And I sit there so jealous.
Oh, no.
So, really do your research. Like, you might love their style, which is great. I loved my photographer's style. We have some gorgeous wedding photos, but do a little more than that. Ask for previous albums, ask if there's an assistant. And I guess this kind of goes into, could be applied to any vendor, right? So photography was the most important to me. So I should have allocated a little bit more budget to that. So I didn't get an assistant because it was more money, but photographer is most important. So I should have put more money there and maybe not have focused it on something else. And that can be true with anything, right? Like, if you are someone that loves to dance, don't take a cut on your DJ. I have a horror story with that one, but
oh no.
I had a couple that her and her husband loved to dance. They hired a DJ that was, I think he was right around $1,000, so, something on lower end of the budget. He didn't have like any reviews. Leading up to the wedding, his responses were very, it was kind of like typing an email with a high schooler. Like, it would be like, instead of typing out never mind, it would be NVM or like cool.
Oh, okay. So not very professional.
Not very professional. So I was a little worried, but he was confirming. So I was like, okay, that's just the way he talks. Day of, he was very late. He only showed up 15 minutes prior to ceremony.
Oh my
They were
goodness.
calling. He said he had a flat tire. Fine, things happen. He was great to talk to in person, but then throughout the night they had so many issues that he played the wrong version of their first dance song, which was choreographed. So that
Oh no. Ah.
he, wasn't they created a whole playlist for him for their open dance floor, and he wasn't playing the songs from that. He told them he had the fog on the dance floor,
Yes.
but it was like actually just made out of made out of a trash can and dry ice. He like burnt his arm.
Oh dear goodness.
It was a little messy.
It was DIY'd.
It was DIY.
Wow. I didn't
He,
even know you could I didn't even know you could do that.
yeah, I didn't either. I was like, oh, look at
This
that.
is new. Oh my gosh.
They
Wow.
Yeah, and it's sad because you don't get to redo it. So, so that was a bummer. She, at the end of the day, she still loves her wedding, but that was something that she wishes she dove in more for. So that's the big advice there is invest in the vendors that you care about most.
Yes. And that I feel like is even tied back to the first tip with the planning meeting and the sit down talk to your partner. Like, okay, what is most important to us? Where do we want to allocate our money?
Yeah. There's ways you can save. There's so many, if you have to, just
If
speaking
you have to.
that,
You
yes,
might not have
you
to.
have to save. There's so many ways to do it. You just have to get a little bit creative and then push that money where you need it most. I think that's all my big advice. But I, not to be cliche, a little biased, I say you need a coordinator, right? I am a coordinator, but I also say you need one or a planner. If you can't afford a planner, at the very least, get a coordinator for all the reasons that we talked about. We are kind of like the masterminds behind the scenes. We make everything flow. It makes everyone's job a little bit easier. And that being said, talk to your venue about it, because some venues have their own event manager or coordinator, however they title the position, and they do it all. Or some of them are there for just a little bit of time and they leave. Other ones, they are coordinator, but what they do isn't the same as what I would do. So their roles are more venue focused instead of couple focused, and not bashing in any ways. It's just you want to make sure all your bases are covered.
Right. Like just because the venue says they provided a coordinator doesn't mean that that coordinator is doing what you would do as a couple focused coordinator.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I also say the same thing. If anybody asks, like, should I hire a coordinator? Answer is always yes. Always worth it. Always, always, always worth it. As
Yeah.
somebody's been to so many weddings, seen all the behind the scenes, it's never a bad idea. Let's just say that.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
So lovely talking to you, hearing about all of the ways that you help couples be very blissful throughout the whole entire wedding day. And I hope to work with you again soon.
Me too. Thank you for having me. This has been lovely. I could probably talk your ear off all day. So this has been super fun.
I love it. Man, that was such a great episode. Sheila is seriously the sweetest, and I mean it when I said I have literally never seen her not smiling. She is amazing. If you are on the fence about having a coordinator at your wedding, I hope this episode gave you some clarity for what all a coordinator does and all the ways they can help you stay blissfully in the moment throughout every single second of your wedding day. Give Sheila a follow. She is on Instagram at Beyond Blissful _events. So thank you bunches for listening. I appreciate your time and I hope you learned something valuable. Now go hug your person and I will see you next Wednesday.